Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So I've got a couple of interesting news articles today. There's one from Afghanistan, and there's one from Missouri. The first article here from Afghanistan, apparently the Afghan president says that the U.S. should re-examine its troop withdrawal deadline. This, of course, you may recall there's been the deal signed between U.S. President Barack Obama and Afghan President Ashraf Ghani to keep U.S. forces in Afghanistan to 2024 and beyond. Well, apparently there's something that is within that deal that has a certain operation lasting through 2016. So that is what he's talking about specifically, is this particular operation, because there is no deadline for troops to leave Afghanistan. The U.S. military will stay for damn near another decade at the minimum. So the article here from UPI says, the president of Afghanistan said in a television interview scheduled to air Sunday night that the United States should re-examine its troop withdrawal deadline. He told 60 Minutes, deadlines concentrate the mind, but deadlines should not be dogmas. If both parties, or in this case, multiple partners, have done their best to achieve the objectives and progress is very real, then there should be willingness to re-examine a deadline. When he was asked if he had spoken with Barack Obama, Ghani's response was, President Obama knows me. We don't need to tell each other. So apparently, Obama and Ashraf Ghani are really tight. They can, finish each other's sentences, read each other's minds. But it baffles my mind that they're trying to portray, the U.S. military is leaving Afghanistan when that is not the case at all. The article here continues. It says, the statement comes a week after NATO announced a formal end to its combat operations in Afghanistan after 13 years of war that cost the lives of 2,356 U.S. and 1,129 coalition military personnel, as well as approximately $1 trillion. Now, what they're not telling you is the number of civilians that were killed in Afghanistan. They're not telling you about the people that were killed by drones in Pakistan as part of the fighting that was happening in Afghanistan, or presumably happening as part of the fighting within Afghanistan. They're calling this thing the global war on terror that basically justifies the U.S. military dropping a bomb anywhere, or dropping a drone bomb anywhere in the world. The article continues. It says the Taliban declared victory after NATO's announcement with a message saying, we consider this step a clear indication of their defeat and disappointment. A slew of Taliban attacks induced chaos in Kabul and other areas in recent months, signaling anticipation of the NATO withdrawal. At the height of the war, over 140,000 coalition troops were stationed in Afghanistan. Now about 10,000 remain for training and support purposes, a number scheduled to be cut in half during 2015. President Obama announced last year that all U.S. service personnel would be withdrawn from Afghanistan by the end of 2016. And again, this is despite the agreement to keep the military, the U.S. military, in Afghanistan to some extent to 2024 and beyond. The article here concludes, it says, despite 2014 being the deadliest year for Afghan security forces, with over 5,000 being killed at the hands of the Taliban, General John Campbell, commander of remaining forces in Afghanistan, expressed confidence in the Afghan military. Campbell told CBS, "It's the number one respected institution in Afghanistan. A couple years ago, I would probably not have said that, but today it is." And again, it boggles my mind that they're trying to portray somehow that the U.S. military is going to actually leave Afghanistan. All you have to do is look at all of the other military conflicts that the U.S. has been involved with in, I don't know, the last 120 years. There's still U.S. military in the Philippines. There's still U.S. military in Cuba. Both of those countries, the military got involved with because of the Spanish-American War. That was in the late 1890s. So well over 115 years ago. But the U.S. military is still there. There's still military across Europe. There's still military in South Korea. There's, basically everywhere that the U.S. has gotten involved with over at least the last 120 years, probably even further, there is still some amount of U.S. military personnel in those countries. And I don't think that that number is ever going to go to zero. I seriously, as long as the United States government exists, there will be members of the United States military in pretty much every country around the globe. And it's sad because those people don't need to be over there. And the military should not be spending damn near $1 trillion a year on foreign policy. And yes, you can fact check that number because PolitiFact actually did that a couple of years ago when Ron Paul gave that number during one of the presidential debates. They fact-checked the number, and what you do is you include not just the money spent directly on the conflict, but you have all of the money spent by the military for basically any overseas location, and you include the money spent in the VA, which is the VA hospitals, the Veterans Administration hospitals, because presumably most of the military personnel that are getting treated at the VA would not need to be treated had it not been for the U.S. foreign policy, sending them around the world to kill people. The next story that I want to bring to the table here, it's something that, again, it's one of these news stories that just sort of baffles the mind. The prosecutor in Ferguson, Missouri, is being sued by one of the jurors, or one of the people that was a juror on that grand jury that failed to indict the police officer that killed Michael Brown. So I've got that when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. I intend to leave New Hampshire at the conclusion of the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and return at the beginning of PorcFest. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while continuing to produce daily Liberty media. Pensacola, Florida, Austin, Texas, Sedona, Arizona, and Denver, Colorado are already on the map. If you have a college group, a local Liberty on the Rocks, or other Liberty meetup that you'd like me to visit, you can possibly add your event to my calendar. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So the article here from Reuters says grand juror in Missouri police shooting case sues prosecutor. And yes, Robert McCullough, or McCulloch, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but he's the prosecutor in St. Louis County, Missouri, and he is being sued by one of the people that was a grand juror. And I've got the story, again, as I said, it's from Reuters. The link will be in the show notes, so you can go find the story, read it for yourself. A member of the grand jury that declined to indict Missouri police officer Darren Wilson, who fatally shot an unarmed 18-year-old, sued the prosecutor in the case on Monday, criticizing the way evidence was presented to grand jurors and seeking court permission to speak publicly about the way the case was handled. The lawsuit was filed in federal court in St. Louis against St. Louis County Prosecutor Robert McCullough by the grand juror, whose name was withheld but was referred to as Grand Juror Doe. So we don't even know if this is a male or a female juror. The lawsuit relates to the August 9th shooting of Michael Brown by Darren Wilson in the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson. Brown's death and the grand jury's decision not to indict Wilson triggered months of protest over police treatment of African Americans across the United States. The suit argues that state law prohibiting the grand juror from talking about the case is unconstitutional. Jeffrey Mittman, executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union in Missouri, said the Brown case is an important public policy issue and that the grand jurors should be allowed to speak about the proceedings. After the November 24th announcement by McCullough that the grand jury decided not to indict Wilson, and the release by the prosecutor of evidence presented, some critics accused the prosecutor of unfairly skewing the process in favor of the police officer. And you may recall, a few weeks ago, I had the article titled, "It's Easier to Convict a Ham Sandwich, or to Indict a Ham Sandwich, than a Police Officer." And some of the stuff that was presented there showed basically that the prosecutor overloaded the grand jury with information, which is very atypical for what a prosecutor does with a grand jury. Most of the time, the grand jury is given the base evidence, which is just enough to show that there's, probable cause to put the charge through so that it goes to full trial. In the Darren Wilson, Michael Brown case, based on what I know, it seemed as though the prosecutor was having the grand jury be the actual jury and deciding whether or not Darren Wilson should be convicted, when all they were really supposed to be doing was to see if there's enough evidence to move forward with an official charge. And that there were some legal experts that said, this, regardless of what evidence there was or what contradictory witness statements there were, this should have actually gone to a full trial so that everything would then be public and basically, the police department is trying to say we did nothing wrong. So let them have an actual trial so that they can prove that they did nothing wrong. But that's not what happened. The prosecutor, again, basically from what I understand of what happened, the prosecutor overloaded the grand jury. And I can understand why a prosecutor would want to do that. Because let's think about this for a second. Prosecutors generally work side by side with the police. Because the police will come to them, hey, here's this evidence. I need you to get the grand jury to indict this guy so we can move forward with charges. Now, if you've got a prosecutor that is doing the same thing to police officers, and police are actually being indicted when they violate people's rights, then the police aren't really going to trust that prosecutor. Even though the prosecutor is being completely unbiased, the police are then not going to have a good relationship with the prosecutor, and then it makes for basically a hostile work environment. So you have the prosecutors that want to keep the police happy, so the prosecutors will do everything they can to make sure that the police never get indicted. The article here continues. It says a spokesman for the prosecutor had no comment on the lawsuit. The lawsuit claims that evidence was presented to the grand jury in a manner markedly different than in previous cases heard by the same grand jury, with the insinuation that Brown was the wrongdoer rather than Wilson. It also claims the prosecutor's office presented applicable laws to the grand jury in a muddled and untimely manner, unlike the presentation of such laws in other cases. The grand juror also contends that McCulloch's public statements about the decision not to indict were entirely accurate, including the implication that all grand jurors believed that there was no support for any charges, according to the suit. The grand jury in the case began in May, or rather they began meeting in May for a term originally scheduled to conclude in September. But that term was extended so that the jurors could take up the Brown shooting. Lawyers for Brown's family and some witnesses say he was trying to surrender when Wilson shot him multiple times. Wilson's supporters, however, say the officer feared for his life and fired at Brown in self-defense. Now, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but I do know that the case, it should definitely have been heard in a public courtroom. It should not have been one of these behind closed doors sort of things. And, let an actual jury decide whether or not Darren Wilson acted in self-defense, as he claims, or if he shot someone execution style, as Brown's family and some of the witnesses claim. And again, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but I do know that jaywalking should not end in death. And, of course, there may have been something else. I don't know. I'm not willing to, say that Darren Wilson should be executed for what he did, but based on what I know, it seems as though Darren Wilson was acting inappropriately and that he most likely violated someone's rights. But again, I wasn't there. I don't know. There's more when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. I trust Coinbase. You should too. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. I intend to leave New Hampshire at the conclusion of the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and return at the beginning of PorcFest. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while continuing to produce daily Liberty media. Pensacola, Florida, Austin, Texas, Sedona, Arizona, and Denver, Colorado are already on the map. If you have a college group, a local Liberty on the Rocks, or other Liberty meetup that you'd like me to visit, you can possibly add your event to my calendar. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So what happens if a robot or a piece of computer software commits a crime? Does the computer go to jail? Does the person that owns the computer go to jail? Or does the creator of the computer program or the robot go to jail? That actually is not as odd of a question as you may think, because it's happening. The story here from The Guardian asks the very same question, and then they follow up with, where does legal culpability lie if code is criminal by design or default? What if a robot buys drugs, weapons, or hacking equipment and has them sent to you and police intercept the package? These are questions we haven't had to ask until now, but they are part of a pertinent philosophical dilemma thrown up by the emergence of darknet markets, anonymous internet use, and Bitcoin. Now, I don't know why they necessarily throw Bitcoin in here, other than just, Bitcoin as the medium of exchange. But Bitcoin in and of itself is not, evil any more than dollar bills are evil. Because all of these things that they mentioned, drugs, guns, etc., have been purchased for a long time with dollar bills. It's only been recently that, within the last, 5-6 years, that people have been able to use Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, makes for easy transactions over the internet. The article here continues, however. It says, these and other questions are all explored in a new exhibition, The Darknet, From Memes to Onionland, at the Kunsthalle St. Gallen, an hour east of Zurich, Switzerland. A robot deployed on the dark web over the past few weeks has bought a pair of fake diesel jeans, a baseball cap with a hidden camera, a stash can, a pair of Nike trainers, a decoy letter used to see if your address is being monitored, 200 Chesterfield cigarettes, a set of fire brigade-issued master keys, a fake Louis Vuitton handbag, and 10 ecstasy pills. All of the products are on display as part of the exhibition, which runs until January 11th. The article continues. It says, London-based Swiss artist Maiden Group Bitnik, Carmen Weiskopf, and Domagoj Schmozjo coded the Random Darknet Shopper, an automated online shopping bot, and instructed it to spend $100 in Bitcoin per week on a darknet market that lists over 16,000 items, not all of which are illegal. Their aim is to explore the ethical and philosophical implications of these markets, which, despite high-profile, internationally coordinated raids costing millions, persist and flourish. Weisskopf said, the arts should be able to mirror something that is happening in contemporary society in a contemporary way. We really want to provide new spaces to think about the goods traded on these markets. Why are they traded? How do we as society deal with these spaces? At the moment, there's just a lot of pressure, but not a lot of thinking about stuff. Just immediate reaction. The gallery, and this is actually very funny. The gallery is next to a police station, but the artists say they are not afraid of legal. They are not afraid of legal repercussion of their bot buying illegal goods, because according to Small Joe, we are the legal owner of the drugs. We are responsible for everything the bot does, as we executed the code, but our lawyers and the Swiss Constitution say art in the public interest is allowed to be free. So, yes, even though these three men say we own this because it's for an art exhibit, and the Swiss Constitution says that art in the public interest is allowed to be free, these men have nothing to worry about. Now, what would happen if this happened in the United States? Well, it depends on where in the U.S. it happened, because some drug laws in certain states, there has to be intent. So the person purchasing has to have the intent to purchase the illegal thing. Well, because they just programmed this to purchase whatever it could be argued that there was no intent behind the purchase. However, that does not protect you from possession laws. So most likely, in the United States, the supposed land of the free, people would go to jail for doing this exact same experiment. The article here from The Guardian continues. It says the project aims to explore the ways that trust is built between anonymous participants in a commercial transaction for possibly illegal goods. Perhaps most surprising, not one of the 12 deals the robot made has ended in a scam. Smajlo says, the market's copied procedure from Amazon and eBay, their rating and feedback system is so interesting. With such simple tools, you can gain trust. Their service level was impressive. We had 12 items and everything arrived. Weisskopf added, there has been no scam, no ripoff, nothing. One guy could not deliver a handbag that the bot ordered, but he then returned the Bitcoin to us. So, yeah, this is what happens on the dark net. If somebody orders something and the seller, for whatever reason, can't deliver the product, they return the Bitcoin. It's not like, you go into some shady dark alley, give somebody some money, and he says, hey, so I don't have the product that you wanted. I've got this other thing. Well, no, I don't want the other thing. Give me my money back. No, you already gave me the money, so you either take this other thing or, you don't take anything. The article from The Guardian continues. It says, the pair, that being the pair of artists, see parallels between copyright laws and drug laws. You can enforce laws, but what does that mean for society? Trading is something people have always done without regulation, but today it is regulated, says Weisskopf, adding, there have always been dark markets in cities, online or off. These questions need to be explored, but what system do we have to explore them in? Post-Snowden, space for free thinking online has become limited, and offline is not a lot better. Previously, the collective has hacked London Underground CCTV cameras and invited the operators to a game of chess. And last year, they posted a camera and a GPS tracking device to Julian Assange inside the Ecuadorian embassy. the camera live tweeted its progress to the hands of the WikiLeaks founder. There's more on this article, but the link will be in the show notes. And remember, Wednesday, the Ask Me Anything. Send me your questions, ama@fppradio.com. And, of course, you can always find all of the past shows online, fppradio.com.